The proposed revision to National Electrical Code Section 110.26 addresses working space requirements for electrical equipment operating at 600 volts or less. The goal is to clarify the intent of the existing code and enhance its enforceability, focusing on equipment likely to be examined, adjusted, serviced, or maintained while energized. The current code language, specifically the phrase likely to require, can be interpreted in a way that contradicts safety standards set by OSHA and NFPA 70. The proposed change aims to address this ambiguity and ensure that the code is clear, concise, and enforceable. The revised text will read working space for the following equipment operating at 600 volts, nominal or less to ground and likely to be worked on while energized shall comply with the dimensions of 110.26a on 2 and 3 or as required or permitted elsewhere in this code. This introduces a list of specific equipment types to which the working space requirements apply. This list includes firstly, switchboards, secondly, panel boards, thirdly, industrial control panels, fourthly, meter socket enclosures, fifthly, motor control centers, sixthly, transformers, and seventhly, switches, where used as a disconnecting means. The substantiation for this revision lies in the need to clarify the intent of the existing requirement and make it more enforceable. The phrase likely to be worked on while energized is being clarified to include equipment that is routinely maintained or serviced while energized. This aligns with the safety intent of the National Electrical Code, which is to provide adequate working space for personnel to safely perform necessary tasks on energized equipment. The inclusion of a specific equipment list ensures that the requirement is applied to the most common types of equipment that are likely to be worked on while energized. It's important to note that this list is not exhaustive. Other types of equipment may also require adequate working space if they are routinely worked on while energized. The proposed revision clarifies that the working space requirements of 110.26 apply to the listed equipment types regardless of whether the equipment is installed in a location accessible to unqualified persons. Many types of electrical equipment are installed in locations where access is restricted to qualified personnel only. In these cases, it is still essential to provide adequate working space to ensure the safety of the personnel responsible for maintaining and servicing the equipment. Now, let's delve deeper into each aspect of this proposed revision and understand its implications. Firstly, the clarification of likely to be worked on while energized is crucial. The original wording could be interpreted in various ways, potentially leading to inconsistent enforcement. By specifying that the requirement applies to equipment routinely maintained or serviced while energized, the code provides a more objective criterion for determining when working space is required. This reduces ambiguity and ensures that the requirement is consistently applied across different installations. Secondly, the introduction of a specific equipment list enhances the clarity and enforceability of the code. Without a list, the interpretation of equipment could be overly broad, potentially encompassing every electrical component in a facility. This would be impractical and not aligned with the intent of the code, which is to focus on equipment that poses a significant risk of electrical shock or arc flash during maintenance and servicing. The list focuses on the most common types of equipment that are frequently worked on while energized, such as switchboards, panel boards, and transformers. This allows inspectors and installers to easily identify the equipment that requires specific working clearances. Thirdly, the emphasis on locations with restricted access to qualified personnel is important. Even when equipment is installed in a locked room or behind a fence, qualified personnel still need adequate working space to safely perform their duties. The potential hazards of working on energized equipment are the same regardless of who has access to the equipment. Therefore, the working space requirements must be applied consistently, regardless of the location of the equipment. Now, let's consider each of the listed equipment types and why they are included in the proposed revision. Switchboards are large assemblies of switches, overcurrent protective devices, and metering instruments used to distribute power to various circuits. They often require maintenance and servicing while energized, such as replacing fuses, adjusting settings, and troubleshooting problems. Panel boards are similar to switchboards but are typically smaller and serve a more localized area. They also require regular maintenance and servicing, such as replacing circuit breakers and checking connections. Industrial control panels are used to control and monitor industrial processes. They often contain complex circuitry and require specialized knowledge to maintain and service. Meter socket enclosures house the electric meter that measures the amount of electricity consumed by a building or facility. They may require maintenance or replacement while energized, such as when upgrading the meter or troubleshooting billing issues. Motor control centers are used to control and protect electric motors in industrial applications. They often contain multiple motor starters and other control devices and require regular maintenance and servicing. Transformers are used to step up or step down voltage levels. They are critical components of electrical systems and require periodic inspection and maintenance to ensure proper operation. Switches, where used as a disconnecting means, are used to isolate equipment from the power source for safety purposes. They may require maintenance or replacement while energized if the equipment they serve cannot be de-energized. In summary, the proposed revision to National Electrical Code Section 110.26 is intended to clarify and enhance the enforceability of working space requirements for electrical equipment operating at 600 volts or less, by specifying that the requirement applies to equipment routinely maintained or serviced while energized, and by providing a list of specific equipment types. The revision provides a more objective and consistent basis for determining when working space is required. This will help to improve the safety of electrical workers and reduce the risk of electrical shock and arc flash. It's also important to consider the practical implications of these changes for electrical installers and inspectors. Installers will need to be familiar with the revised requirements and ensure that adequate working space is provided for all listed equipment types. This may require adjustments to the layout of electrical rooms and other spaces where electrical equipment is installed. Inspectors will need to be able to verify that the working space requirements are met during inspections. This will involve measuring the dimensions of the working space and ensuring that it is clear and unobstructed. To further clarify the application of the working space requirements, it's helpful to consider some specific examples. For example, if a new switchboard is being installed in a building, the installer must ensure that the working space in front of the switchboard meets the dimensions specified in 110.26 AON 2 and 3. This includes providing adequate depth, width, and height for personnel to safely work on the switchboard while it is energized. Similarly, if a transformer is being replaced in an industrial facility, the installer must ensure that the working space around the transformer meets the requirements of 110.26a. This may involve relocating other equipment or structures to provide adequate clearance. It's also important to note that the working space requirements are not limited to new installations. They also apply to existing installations when equipment is being replaced or modified. For example, if a panel board is being upgraded in an existing building, the installer must ensure that the working space around the panel board meets the current requirements of 110.26a. In addition to the dimensional requirements, the working space must also be clear and unobstructed. This means that there should be no equipment, storage, or other materials in the working space that could impede access to the equipment or create a hazard for personnel working on the equipment. The National Electrical Code also includes requirements for illumination in working spaces. Adequate lighting is essential for personnel to safely perform tasks on energized equipment. The code specifies minimum illumination levels for working spaces around electrical equipment. In conclusion, the proposed revision to National Electrical Code Section 110.26 represents a significant step forward in enhancing the safety of electrical workers. By clarifying the intent of the existing requirement and providing a more objective and consistent basis for determining when working space is required, the revision will help to reduce the risk of electrical shock and arc flash. Electrical installers, inspectors, and other professionals should familiarize themselves with the revised requirements and ensure that they are properly implemented in all electrical installations. This includes understanding the specific equipment types covered by the revision, the dimensional requirements for working space, and the requirements for clear and unobstructed access and adequate illumination. By working together to implement these changes, we can create a safer working environment for all those who work with electrical equipment. This is a crucial step in protecting the lives and well-being of electrical workers and ensuring the reliability and safety of our electrical systems. Now let us review the specific dimensions mentioned in 110.26 Aeon 2 and 3 that the working space must adhere to. Note that these dimensions depend on the voltage to ground and the condition of the surrounding environment. Condition 1 exists where there is exposed live parts on one side and no grounded parts or grounded parts that are insulated on the other side of the working space. This could be a concrete wall, for example. Condition 2 exists where there are exposed live parts on one side and grounded parts on the other side. Condition 3 exists where there are exposed live parts on both sides of the working space. It is crucial that the correct condition is identified in order to determine the correct working space. For voltages of 150 volts or less to ground, the working space depth required is 3 feet for condition 1, 3 feet for condition 2, and 3 feet for condition 3. For voltages from 151 to 600 volts, the working space depth required is 3 feet for condition 1, 3.5 feet for condition 2, and 4 feet for condition 3. It is important to remember these minimum depth requirements for safety reasons. The width of the working space shall be the width of the equipment, or 30 inches, whichever is greater. In all cases, the working space shall permit at least a 90-degree opening of equipment doors or hinge panels. The height of the working space shall be 6.5 feet, or the height of the equipment, whichever is greater. These dimensions are critical for allowing electricians and other qualified personnel to safely perform their work. It is also important to consider the location of the working space. It should be readily accessible and free from obstructions. The working space should also be well lit and ventilated. Finally, it is important to remember that these are minimum requirements. In some cases, it may be necessary to provide additional working space to ensure the safety of personnel. It is always best to err on the side of caution and provide more working space than is required by the code. By following these guidelines, we can help to ensure that electrical work is performed safely and efficiently. Let's reinforce the key takeaways from this discussion. The proposed revision to National Electrical Code Section 110.26 is a crucial step forward in enhancing electrical safety. It specifically targets working space requirements for electrical equipment operating at 600 volts or less, aiming for clarity and improved enforceability. The revision emphasizes equipment routinely maintained or serviced while energized and includes a defined list of equipment types subject to these requirements. This list encompasses switchboards, panel boards, industrial control panels, meter socket enclosures, motor control centers, transformers, and switches used as disconnecting means. It's important to remember that the specified working space dimensions in 110.26 Aeon 2 and 3 vary depending on the voltage to ground and the surrounding conditions. These conditions are defined as Condition 1, where there are exposed live parts on one side and no grounded parts or grounded parts that are insulated on the other side. Condition 2, where there are exposed live parts on one side and grounded parts on the other side. And Condition 3, where there are exposed live parts on both sides. For instance, with voltages of 151 to 600 volts, the required working space depth differs based on the condition, with 3 feet for Condition 1, 3.5 feet for Condition 2, and 4 feet for Condition 3. Furthermore, the working space's width must be either the width of the equipment or 30 inches, whichever is greater, ensuring that equipment doors or hinge panels can open at least 90 degrees. The working space height needs to be a minimum of 6.5 feet or the height of the equipment, whichever is greater. Adhering to these requirements not only ensures compliance with the National Electrical Code but, more importantly, contributes significantly to the safety and well-being of electrical workers. By providing adequate and unobstructed working space, we can minimize the risk of electrical shock, arc flash, and other hazards associated with working on energized equipment. As electrical professionals, staying informed about code revisions and implementing them diligently is paramount to creating a safer working environment for ourselves and our colleagues. Let's work together to uphold these standards and promote a culture of safety in the electrical industry.